Thank you to Ground News for sponsoring today's video. All right, let's take a look at this story here with ground.news. Love this website. So after new U.S. strikes hitting Yemen, Iran issues a warning about suspected spy ships in the Middle East. Great headline, linking one story to another or one action to another. So U.S. and Yemen are doing its thing, and Iran's over there going, hey, don't you worry about those two ships. They're not spy ships, and you better not touch them because they're busy doing something like spying on you, maybe. All right, so we're going to look at two different sources here. We're going to go with a right-leaning source and a left-leaning source, because this is part of what Ground News does, is it breaks up the news media around the world into these little categories. So I love the highly factual right-leaning source named Sapo. And this is an international source. I had to do a Google to English translation error. So this right-leaning source says Iran has assured that it will retaliate against U.S. attacks against the country. Now, keep in mind, this is a translation, so it may not be a complete sentence. Implied is Iran. So Islamic Republic will not hesitate to use its capabilities, it says, to give response that will make the aggressors regret it. Reacted the spokesman for the Iranian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Nasir Kanani, at a press conference. Okay, let's flip the script here. Now let's go to a left-leaning source. Bam. Right here. We can sort by left. So I want to do left, highly factual, Japan Today. Again, another news source I wouldn't know the link to this. So Ground News is nice that they, consolidate all these international sources so that I can get perspectives from Japan. So world, after U.S. strikes in Yemen, Iran issues warning about suspected spy ships in the Middle East. So here we have some context in the headline, not just the right-leaning headline where it said, hey, don't mess with Iran, and say, don't mess with us. We're going to hit you back if you do. And this headline from Japan Today is giving us a subject. The spy ships are the linchpin in whether or not Iran strikes back here. But check this out. I like this bias insights right here. So the left emphasizes tensions between Iran and the potential target of cargo ships. In contrast, the center focuses on militias backed by Iran and their connection with Israeli war on Hamas. So the left raises concerns about international maritime routes, highlighting the targeted cargo ships suspected of being spy positions for the IRGC. On the other hand, the right portrays these cargo ships as a potential commando base. In fact, they're both. They are an observation post. These two ships are observing and providing targeting information essentially to the Houthis, as well as providing logistical support to elite, in Iran's own words, troops, where the left is just emphasizing the targets, like the cargo ships, the vulnerability of what might be attacked next, implying that if it is attacked, it's not a legitimate military target, when in fact those two cargo ships most certainly are. And why they're still there blows my mind. It shows that there's a lot of politics in this conflict, is really what it shows. And you learn all this from understanding the differences in the headlines, whether it's the left-leaning, right-leaning, highly factual, or mixed factuality. I love the breakdown of these stories. And so we're going to talk more about the U.S. hitting Yemen today in today's video. All right, so this story, like many others here on Subbrief Naval News, comes from ground.news. Because news outlets are algorithm and ad-driven, they tend to sensationalize their stories. This pushes the most extreme radical takes on events. So that narrows their perspective of making it difficult to get a good balanced view of what's actually going on. So Ground News is an app and a website that gathers all the world's media in one place so you can compare coverage and see the full picture. For every story, you get a quick visual breakdown of the news outlet reportings, like their political biases and the factual history of the outlet. I absolutely love that about Ground News. So ground.news, go to ground.news/subbrief, or just click the link in the description to stay fully informed on all the latest naval news in one place. Sign up or subscribe with my link before February 29th, 2024. That's right, it's a leap year this year, so you get an extra day, and you can save 30% off unlimited access to read news you might otherwise miss. like this story right here. This is the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower, who is, quote, consistently keeping aircraft ready and in the skies over Yemen now. Today we're going to be quoting the Rear Admiral that's on board, and I love this photo right here. Look at this. So the way carrier strike groups are run is the aircraft carrier there has two captains. You have a captain of the ship responsible for the ship, and then you have the captain of the air wing that's on board the ship. And then almost always, and then as far as I know, every time, you always have a rear admiral that's in charge of the entire group, you know, usually for the region, but for at least the fleet admiral, if you will. And that's who we're quoting today is Rear Admiral Mark Meguez. Mark Meguez is on board the Eisenhower, and he is a rear admiral. So he says he's launching aircraft every hour to 90 minutes to keep flights going continuously overhead and over Yemen. Now, that is an oddly specific time frame for flight operations. Normally, we don't get that level of detail, but the admiral here is really letting loose, letting everybody know exactly what's going on, and I kind of love it. So the air crews, he says, are working 12-hour shifts to keep the airplanes up. That implies that they have two shifts. And I didn't know this about aircraft carriers. So if anybody out there has any experience on board American aircraft carriers, please put this in the comments. Is there a port and starboard rotation, 12-hour rotation, to keep a 24-hour flight cycle going? My impression to this point, and keep in mind, I was on submarines my whole career, so I don't know, was that you guys did 12-hour shifts and that was it. You did one 12-hour shift that sometimes turned into a 13, 14-hour shift, let's be real. But there was just one. Do you guys have two completely different air crews? One for 12 hours and one for the next 12 hours, and you just do port and starboard rotations? That would be interesting to know if that's how it works. So there's 5,000 sailors on board the Ike here, and she's joined by 4 other destroyers. So we're talking about thousands and thousands of American sailors and officers and crew out there supporting over 70 planes that are made up of the E-2 Hawkeye's early warning aircraft. Those are the aircraft that are propeller driven. They've got the big round dish on top, and they're kind of like the eyes in the sky. They can see everything from ballistic missiles to cruise missiles coming at them from hundreds of miles away, surface ships, of course, and then, of course, airplanes as well, coming at the air group or the fleet. They're a very vital part of over-the-horizon observation so that the fleet has time to prepare for any kind of action that's coming at them. Supporting them are the EA Growlers. Those are the modified FA-18 planes that have the ECCM pods and other equipment that's sensitive on board to help protect the fleet electronically from like surveillance and radar and other sensors that may try and detect the fleet. They can jam and do other things that make the fleet appear not where it actually is. And it's really incredible, but it's also so sensitive, no one's allowed to talk about it. But I really wish they would let us talk a little bit about it, because I love what it does. I still don't really understand how it works, but I love what it does. So, and then finally, there's the FA-18 fighters, which are the hammer of the entire carrier strike group right there. Those are the planes that get up in the air with the weapons, and they're shooting down cruise missiles and taking out USVs and UAVs left, right, and center here. And the Admiral did confirm that our fleet in the Red Sea has destroyed UAVs, which we know about. We even have video evidence of that, and unmanned sea drones. Unmanned sea drones, us taking those out, is not being widely reported, and that's probably because it's not an effective offense against our fleet. The USVs are the unmanned drones that Ukraine is using to sink Russian ships in the Black Sea right now. Russia lost another ship this week to a swarm of half a dozen or more unmanned surface vessels that are remotely driven and have explosives on board, and they literally ram into the side of a ship over and over again until it capsizes and sinks. And apparently the Houthis are trying that tactic with the United States, and it's not working. That's huge news. It works against the Russian Black Sea Fleet because they're operating under an old set of Soviet-era style naval engagement rules, and with that era of equipment, to be fair. Whereas the United States Navy, we've modified and updated, and we pushed the boundaries on our engagements, and we have very good technology that is not Cold War era anymore. No, sir. And so we are able to defend our ships from these USVs in the Red Sea, a limited body of water, versus the Russian fleet is losing ships in the Black Sea. Also, I would say is a limited body of water, but there's a lot more room to move around in the Red Sea than there is here, or I'm sorry, in the Black Sea than there is in the Red Sea. So we are successfully engaging and destroying unmanned sea drones, and that's awesome. That's good news. So all this is coming from this gentleman right here too. I want to give him a lot of credit. I criticize a lot of the leadership at the top of the U.S. Navy. He's not at the very top, and he is one of the best operational leaders I've seen since we started doing naval news a couple of years ago. His name's Rear Admiral Mark Miguez. He's in charge of Carrier Strike Group 2, which is based on board the Dwight D. Eisenhower, part of that Carrier Strike Group there. And he is saying in this interview that he gave to a journalist that they're continuing to degrade Houthi capabilities. The strikes are continuously happening over Yemen right now, even as I'm recording and bringing this to you. And in his words, Carrier Strike Group 2 will stay as long as it takes to defend commerce. And I thought that was an interesting word to use. Since when does the United States Navy defend international commerce? We haven't done that since the 1980s, but apparently it's back. Apparently, we're back defending the shipping lanes. I was shocked when I joined the Navy in 1990 that was not our mission. In the 1980s, that had been our mission the entire time. And one of the reasons why I joined the Navy, I was like, that's kind of cool. Let's go do that. But no, 1,000 Points of Light, George W. Bush, H.W. Bush, back then, tried to set a whole new global order. And that gets into a whole nother video we're not going to get into. But that mission that we did to defend international shipping for decades is back again. And that's what the Admiral here is stating. So very interesting. And another significant development. Not only are we targeting finding unmanned surface vessels and defending the fleet from them, we are doing what haters were saying we could not do. And that is we have enough assets overhead to monitor and track these mobile launchers. So CENTCOM based out of Tampa is in charge of the entire region, Central Command. And they confirmed that U.S. forces destroyed Houthi mobile anti-ship missile systems before it was fired. And that's huge. So what these missile systems are is they're on board these trucks. They usually have a twin launcher on each one, and they can drive up and down the beach anywhere. They're very hard to find because they're so small and mobile, and they can blend in with traffic on a radar display. So they just might be one bit in a long line of bits. Well, we have improved our detection capability to find these mobile launchers now. Now, the way that this one works is when it gets to its position, its firing position, it stops. It has to put down some supports, rotate, put in some targeting information. All that stuff takes time to do. And we are able, apparently with this report, able to identify these trucks, track them, wait for them to stop. And then in the few minutes that we have to put weapons on them, we are able to do that in that limited time frame. So after the truck has stopped, but before it launches, there is a guided weapon on it from probably an F-18 overhead. And that's great news. We're able to do it, and we're doing it in Yemen. And everybody who said that, we'll never find them all, well, we're finding them one at a time, folks. And that's how it starts. So let's talk a little bit about this weapon system. I got a great video coming up. I can't wait to publish it for you this weekend, talking about all of Iran's major weapon systems. This is one of them. This is one that they're providing to the Houthis in Yemen. It's the Qadir, if I'm saying the name right, Qadir long-range anti-ship missile. It's based on a Chinese design, the YJ-82 Eagle Strike, which is the mainstay weapon China intends to use against the United States Navy should we ever come to blows, which is why this is so important that we can defeat this thing. So the Eagle Strike is a subsonic missile that flies at low altitude. I'm talking between 100 feet and 1,000 feet towards its target. When it gets to approximately 7 kilometers of its target, it hits what's called terminal point, and it goes down into a sea skimming profile because by then it's going to be over water. So as a sea skimming missile approaches its target, it does a couple things that makes it very hard to decoy. It has a very advanced Chinese-based electronic countermeasure, which means it's difficult to not just chafe and flare and decoy. If you try and jam it, it has home-on jam capability and other things that allows the missile to have a high chance of still hitting the target despite being jammed successfully. It's really quite miraculous. The seeker on this thing is scary accurate, and the long-range version of this missile can reach over 200 kilometers. It's highly unlikely the Houthis have that version because they don't need it. The Red Sea ain't that wide, the sea that they're shooting into. Even the Gulf of Aden, not that wide. So they don't need the long range one, just know that it does exist. Iran makes these missiles 100% indigenously. Just because it's based on a Chinese design doesn't mean that they need Chinese supply anymore. They're making it themselves. Iran has successfully leveraged its relationship with China, North Korea, and Russia to make an in-house arsenal of weapons that we're going to go over in this weekend's video. You guys can look forward to that coming out soon. But big news, not only are we sinking USVs that Russia can't seem to sink, we're destroying those before they can hit our fleet. We're also taking out these very advanced anti-ship cruise missiles before they're launched in a very short, narrow window of time between the truck being stopped and the truck actually firing its missile. And that is quite an achievement. So well done to everybody involved with that, because I'm sure it's more than just the Navy, but the Navy's playing a major role in this. Some big news coming out of the Red Sea, and I had to verify this with a friend that knows more about the local scene than I do, because he's closer to it. But apparently the Royal Navy has pulled HMS Diamond, this air defense destroyer, very advanced destroyer, out of the Red Sea. And this came immediately after 3 waves of ballistic missiles were shot at it. So it appears, if you don't look any deeper than that, that because of those 3 waves of ballistic missiles, the UK is pulling their destroyer out and not replacing it with one. There is a frigate that is scheduled to go to the Red Sea. I'm not sure if it's on site yet. It might be. But even if the frigate does replace the destroyer, that's not a one-to-one replacement at all. This thing is much more capable than an anti-submarine destroyer is in terms of air defense. This is literally an air defense destroyer, and it's now gone through the Straits of Gibraltar and is already on its way home. I don't want to get any more specific than that. So, of course, because it left right after that Houthi attack, which was a major multi-wave ballistic missile attack against a ship, against a UK ship, Muhammad Ali al-Houthi, the leader, I assume, of the Houthis, came forward to claim victory over the HMS Diamond, saying that, quote, all warships will be forced to leave the Red Sea, end quote, implying that it left because of the ballistic missile attack. Now, it's very likely that since the UK, the Royal Navy, was sending a frigate to the Red Sea, that it was just natural rotation. HMS Diamond was just due to come home, and that's why she left when she did. And it was coincidence that it happened at the same time as a massive attack attempted to sink her, but failed. But they can take victory in saying that they caused the ship to leave despite not destroying the ship. It's no longer there in the Red Sea. Therefore, it's a victory for the Houthis. And that's exactly what they're saying here. So I believe it was a normal rotation. You guys can talk about it in the comments. Do you think the HMS Diamond left because of the attack, or was it just her natural rotation to go home? What do you guys think about the news that the United States Navy can destroy USVs long before they make it to the fleet? We're tracking and destroying mobile anti-ship truck launchers, TELs, transport electric. Well, TEL is a little bit different, but still a mobile launcher. I think this is all good news for the Navy. And you guys let me know. Thanks for watching the whole video, by the way. You're now much more informed than most people about what's going on, because most news outlets don't go this far in depth about what's actually happening. And it's a lot of really good things for the Royal Navy and the United States Navy. All right. Thanks for watching, everybody. And hey, support the sponsors that support this channel. They keep us going. They got us through a rough patch there in January. And so I want to say thank you very much to Ground News for keeping the faith with us. Please click the link in the description just to let them know that you appreciate this channel, and keeping their support is important to us. Thanks for watching, everybody.